Every name you've ever given someone, colleague, enemy, stranger, friend, is a story you wrote. What if the whole world you think you're seeing is just a list of labels your mind made up? And there's something underneath all of it you've never actually looked at. Here's the strange claim we're going to sit with today. The way we divide the world into separate, named things, people, problems, situations, moods, mornings, isn't something we're passively observing. It's something we're actively doing. Constantly, every label we attach creates a small gap. A gap between us and the thing. A gap between us and each other. And most of us have been living inside those gaps for so long, we've mistaken them for the shape of reality itself. The practice isn't to stop using names. You still have to say coffee, and Tuesday, and my sister. The practice is to stop mistaking the map for the territory. To notice, even briefly, that underneath all the labels, something whole and unbroken is still there, and it was there the whole time. Let me offer you an image. Imagine the world is a museum, and when you walked in, years ago, before you have any memory of walking in, someone handed you an audio guide. One of those little devices with headphones that narrates every painting before you even look at it. This is a portrait of a nobleman. Notice the dignity in his posture. Notice the sadness in his eyes. You've been listening to that guide your whole life. Walking from room to room, hearing the label before you see the thing itself. That's your mother, that's traffic. That's a difficult person. That's a good day, that's a bad one. And here's what's wild, the guide is so seamless, so constant, so perfectly synced to what you're looking at, that you forgot it was a guide. You thought it was just the world talking. The lesson here isn't to smash the audio guide. You need it. You'd bump into walls without it. The lesson is more subtle. Notice you're wearing headphones. And every so often, for a moment, for a breath, take them off. And just look. Here's how this shows up in an ordinary week. You're in a meeting, you're mid-sentence, actually getting somewhere, and a colleague cuts you off. The interruption itself takes maybe a second and a half, but in that second and a half, something fires inside you faster than thought. A label lands. Maybe it's dismissive, maybe it's arrogant, maybe it's just a tired, all-purpose, that person. You don't decide to apply it. It arrives already applied, like it was preloaded and waiting. And then, this is the part that costs you the rest of your afternoon. You spend the next 40 minutes half present. You're nodding. You're taking notes. But a background process is running. Replaying the moment. Building the case. Adding this to the pile of evidence about who this person is. By the time the meeting ends, you're not really in a room with a human anymore. You're in a room with a category. Later that day, someone mentions offhand, they got some hard news right before the meeting started. A parent's diagnosis. A relationship ending. Doesn't matter what, nothing about the interruption changed. The event is identical, but the label just shifted. And when the label shifted, so did everything you thought you saw. Sit with that for a second. Because it's telling you something important. If the label can change without the event changing, then the label was never the event. It was something you were laying on top of the event. Which means, and this is uncomfortable, You weren't reacting to the person all afternoon. You were reacting to your own paperwork. This is where curiosity has to enter, or nothing shifts. Because once you notice that the label was doing the work, a strange question opens up. What if the person you think you know, your partner, your boss, your neighbor, the version of your teenager you've been fighting with? What if you've never actually seen them? Only named them. I'm not saying they're a mystery. I'm not saying you don't know real things about them. I'm saying, there's a difference between the file you've been keeping on someone and the person who is actually, right now, in the room. The file gets thicker every year. The person keeps changing, and most of us are having relationships with the file. This isn't a moral failing. It's how minds work. The audio guide is efficient. It's how we get through the day without collapsing under complexity. But the cost is real. Every label is a small wall, and after enough years, we're standing in a room made entirely of walls, wondering why we feel so alone in a world full of people. Here's where the reframe actually lands. The labels aren't lies. That's important. Your colleague may in fact be someone who interrupts. Your sister may in fact be someone who forgets birthdays. These aren't hallucinations. The labels are pointing at something, but the labels are not the person. And the difference between those two sentences, the label is pointing at something, and the label is the person, is the difference between a life that feels like a courtroom and a life that feels like an open field. In the courtroom version, everyone is a case you're building. Every interaction is evidence. You're always half a step back from the moment, cross-referencing, updating the file. It's exhausting, and you don't even know you're doing it. In the open field version, you still know things. You still recognize patterns. You still make reasonable choices about who to trust. But you're not defending a verdict anymore. The person in front of you is allowed to be more than the summary of them you've been carrying. And here's the quiet gift. When you stop needing them to match the label, you stop arguing with reality through your definitions. The pressure comes off. Not because they changed, because you stopped requiring them to be the shape you'd already decided they were. So what does the practice actually look like? Not in theory, on a Wednesday. You still call your colleague by name. You still make plans. You still say, "my difficult neighbor," when you're venting to a friend. The names stay. What changes is how tightly you're gripping them. You might catch yourself mid-story, mid-complaint, mid-judgment, and just notice. Notice you're wearing the headphones. Notice the audio guide is running, and for one breath, take them off. Look at the person, or the situation, or the day, without the narration. You won't do it perfectly. That's not the point. The point is that even a few seconds of looking without the label starts to loosen something. The walls get a little thinner. The room gets a little bigger. And here's what nobody tells you about this practice. The biggest change isn't in how you see other people. It's in how much lighter you feel. Because you didn't realize how much energy you were spending, every single day, keeping everyone sorted into their categories. Keeping the files updated. defending your verdicts, managing the museum. When you start holding the names lightly, that whole job quietly dissolves. You don't have to know exactly who everyone is anymore. You don't have to be right about them. You get to just be here, with what's actually in front of you, which turns out to be much less threatening and much more alive than the labels suggested. The world doesn't stop being the world. Meetings still happen, colleagues still interrupt. But you're not spending your afternoon in a private courtroom anymore. You're back in the room, and underneath all the naming, all the sorting, all the stories you've been writing without knowing it, something whole is still there. It was never actually gone. You just couldn't hear it over the guide. If you're finding value here, you're welcome to like the video and subscribe. And now, let's shift into a quiet guided meditation together. Let's take a few minutes to let this land somewhere deeper than thinking. Find a way of sitting that lets your body rest. Nothing dramatic. Just enough that your shoulders can drop a little. Let your eyes close, or soften them toward the floor, and notice, without doing anything about it, that you're breathing. The breath was here before you paid attention to it. It's not something you have to start. Let a few breaths pass. Now, gently, bring to mind someone you've been carrying a story about. Not the biggest one. Just someone. Notice the label that arrives with them, the word, the tone, the little verdict. You don't have to argue with it. You don't have to fix it. Just notice it's there, and for one breath, imagine setting the headphones down, not smashing them. Just setting them down beside you. What's left, when the narration goes quiet, is just a person. Someone doing their best with what they were given. Someone whose day you don't fully know. Let that be enough for a moment. Breathe. Now bring the same attention to yourself. Notice the labels you've been wearing about who you are, the old summaries, the tired verdicts. Set those down too, just for now. Underneath the names, something is still here. Something that was here before any label arrived. Something that doesn't need to be defended or defined. Rest there. You don't have to name it. You don't have to hold it. It's holding you. Breathe. Let the room around you come back slowly. The sounds, the temperature, the weight of your body in the chair. You can carry this quiet with you. Not as a technique, as a small remembering. That underneath every name you use today, something whole is still there. And when you're ready, open your eyes. Thank you for practicing with us today. If you'd like, there's a link to a free digital copy of ACIM in the description. And if this video resonated with you, please comment. I am grateful. Thank you for spending this time here. It's a strange, quiet kind of work, noticing the stories we've been writing without knowing it, and the fact that you stayed with it matters. Be gentle with yourself as you go back into the day. You don't have to see everyone perfectly. Just a little more lightly. That's already a lot.